By 1982, Billy Joel was a titan of popular music, becoming famed for timeless ballads like Piano Man and New York State of Mind, and releasing highly acclaimed and chart-topping albums like Turnstiles, The Stranger, 52nd Street, and Glass Houses. Following these albums, he began work on his next studio album. The sessions began in the winter of 1981 with Joel on vocals, acoustic piano, electric piano, synthesizers, Hammond organ, melodica, Prophet 5 synthesizer, and Synclavier 2. He was joined by his touring band, with David Brown on lead guitar, Russell Javers on rhythm guitar, Doug Stegmeyer on bass, and Liberty DeVito on drums and percussion. Numerous additional musicians filled out the orchestral arrangements. The lyrics were entirely written by Billy Joel, almost in exact order of the final track listing. And for the first time for Joel, he wrote some of the songs in the studio, which meant that he did not have a clear idea of the final product until the mixing process. The album was produced by Phil Ramone, who produced the 3 prior albums. Joel would later describe the sound of the album as rich, with many layers of composition. The album was digitally recorded, mixed, and mastered, making it one of the earliest of its kind, technologically. By the end of the arduous recording of the album, it had taken about a year to produce. Due both to the heavy burden of recording and producing the music, and a set of recent personal issues, Joel felt extreme exhaustion after the album's completion. It would be released as The Nylon Curtain on September 23, 1982, peaking at number 7 on the Billboard Albums chart and in the top 20 all around the world. Music videos were made for several songs from the album, directed by Russell Mulcahy. Billy Joel himself later claimed the album to be the one that he is most proud of making, and the album he is most proud of until his final non-classical album, The River of Dreams. Despite this assessment from the man himself, The Nylon Curtain has taken a comparative back seat in the discussion of Joel's greatest albums, typically outranked in popularity by The Stranger, 52nd Street, and Glass Houses. But today, I'll tell you why The Nylon Curtain is not only Billy Joel's greatest album, but also his greatest musical accomplishment. Let's take a peek behind that nylon curtain. This is... Our story begins in the blue-collar community of Allentown. It was released as the second single from the album, reaching number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100 and spending 6 consecutive weeks there. A companion music video was directed by Russell Mulcahy. Mulcahy was the most accomplished music video director at that time, directing videos for many popular music stars like Paul McCartney, Fleetwood Mac, the Rolling Stones, Duran Duran, and many more. Perhaps Mulcahy's most famous music video was for the Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star, the first music video to air on MTV. When talking about the song creation method of The Nylon Curtain, Billy Joel said, rather than just starting with the basic song and adding to it, we kind of started with the songs from the outside and worked our way in. He also remarked, I was trying to go for a Sgt. Pepper kind of thing, where I was playing the studio as an instrument. This is immediately introduced in the beginning of Allentown. A whistle blows, signaling the beginning of the work shift. We're then launched into a chugging rhythm that was designed to mimic the sound of a rolling mill converting steel ingots into I-beams. This sound was commonly heard throughout the Pennsylvania town of South Bethlehem, where the Bethlehem Steel Plant was in operation from 1857 to 1995. While the song is written about Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Joel changed the name of the song to avoid confusion about the lyrics being a religious statement. The song's writing began in the late 1970s under the changed title of Levittown, another town in Pennsylvania. The name was changed one more time to Allentown, yet another Pennsylvania town. Joel explained the name change by saying Allentown has a nice musical sound. He also said it was more natural to rhyme with. The layered recording features a predominantly cheery melody with an exceedingly catchy chorus. The cheeriness of the melody juxtaposes the unfortunate context of the lyrics. The opening lyrics immediately establish the societal backdrop of the album and explains the generation that the album is meant to speak to. Well, we're living here in Allentown, and they're closing all the factories down. Out in Bethlehem, they're killing time, filling out forms, standing in line. Well, our fathers fought the Second World War, spent their weekends on the Jersey Shore, met our mothers at the USO, asked them to dance, danced with them slow. The album thematically concerns the generation of Americans born after World War II. While Joel designed the album to be enjoyed by all, the album is meant to speak directly to this generation of which he is a part of. At the time in 1982, there was little popular music made to resonate with this generation, who was in their 30s. The lyrics stand in the shadow of the recession of the early 1980s, following the stagflation of the late 1970s. Specifically, the collapsing of the steel industry in Pennsylvania is spotlighted. The Bethlehem Steel Company was the second largest steel manufacturer for the majority of the 20th century, but by the 1980s it was in decline. Multiple steel plants were shutting down and declaring bankruptcy, and Allentown seeks to examine the effect of these closures on normal, hardworking Americans. Before moving on to verse 2, it is important to mention that Joel was not intending to make a political statement with this song, but rather making an observation about a current event. The second verse explains the empty promises of the school system. Well, we're waiting here in Allentown for the Pennsylvania we never found, for the promises our teachers gave, if we worked hard, if we behaved. So the graduations hung on the wall, but they never really helped us at all. No, they never taught us what was real, iron and coke, chromium steel. This verse introduces the central conflict of the album, the crushing realities of life. Even if you do the right thing, there is no guarantee that you will be rewarded for it. As the narrator finds out, studying hard and behaving in school has only led him into a career in the steel industry, just like everyone else in Allentown. This skepticism over the usefulness of the school system expands into skepticism of the institutions of America in The Bridge. Every child had a pretty good shot to get at least as far as their old man got. But something happened on the way to that place. They threw an American flag in our face. For this generation, the event that threw an American flag in their faces was being drafted into Vietnam. Or in other words, this generation was told that to save America's future, we must sacrifice America's future, which was the youngest generation. And we'll witness the true effect of this sacrifice in the last song on side 1 of the album. Despite the crisis the song and story introduce, there's a hopefulness nestled within, a fighting spirit that refuses to be brought down by the larger world caving under. Since the release of the song, Allentown, Pennsylvania embraced the song, with Joel being awarded the key to the city by the town's mayor, Joe DiDonna. He remarked that it was a gritty song about a gritty city. Leaving the steel mill, we enter the Beatlesque diatribe of Laura. The influence from the Beatles can be felt strongly throughout the album, and it is quite apparent on this song. It almost feels like they are playing each instrument, with the Ringo-tinged drum rhythm, Beatlesque backing vocals, George Martin-influenced string accompaniment, and the rhythm guitar reminiscent of George Harrison. The vocal delivery has visible shades of John and Paul, with the frustrated delivery invoking John and the O's in the chorus invoking Paul. The plodding rhythm and genius chord progression composition combine to create a sound that expertly backs the lyrics. To me, the heavy Beatle influence makes Laura sound like an echo of the kind of music that the band would have made if they had been able to make that fateful comeback. But on December 8, 1980, this potential was stolen from the world. The recent assassination of John Lennon brought the Beatles back to the forefront of Billy Joel's mind. Their influence had always been present in his music, especially in songs like Don't Ask Me Why and Through the Long Night from his previous studio album, Glass Houses. As for the lyrical content of the song, it pertains to the narrator's relationship with someone named Laura. Joel later described this relationship. We all have relatives we can't divorce, that we can't detach ourselves from, that we have a relationship with, and it's kind of a tortured relationship. All of us know that one person who always knows how to give you guilt. For some it's mom, for some it's the spouse, or someone else. The first verse establishes the conflict. Laura calls me in the middle of the night, passes on her fateful information. Then these careless fingers, they get caught in her vice, till they're bleeding on my coffee table. Laura always passes her problems on to the narrator, often at the worst times. The narrator then questions the pain. Living alone isn't all that it's cracked up to be. I'm on her side, why does she push the poison on me? The attitude from Allentown follows into this song, with the narrator doing the right thing and being rewarded with further pain. The narrator then loses it in the bridge. Here I am, feeling like a fool. Do I react the way exactly she intends me to? Every time I think I'm off the hook, she makes me lose my cool. I'm her machine, and she can punch all the keys. She can push any button I was programmed through. In a career first, Billy Joel drops the F-bomb, to convey that the narrator is at his wit's end. This shocking moment harkens back to John Lennon's famous F-bomb on Working Class Hero. When an incredibly beloved artist has a moment such as this, it shakes you from your seat, and makes you pay more attention to the words that he delivers. In an interview about the Nylon Curtain, the interviewer observed that the song is very Lennon, to which Joel agreed, and then he continued to say that Lennon was an important part of his musical roots, and that his recent death had inspired the way he wrote and sang on the album. But this song is also evoking Lennon in another important way, the subject matter of the lyrics. This frustration with someone close is never deliberately attributed to a specific person. However, Billy Joel's drummer Liberty DeVito claimed that the song was about Joel's mother, and this is most likely true when examining the next chorus of the song. Sometimes I feel like this Godfather deal is all wrong. How can she hold an umbilical cord for so long? This frustration with his mother evokes the opening track on Lennon's masterpiece debut album, Mother. At the end of Laura, the outro explains why the narrator keeps her around. She always says, "I'm the best friend that she's ever had. How do you hang up on someone who needs you that bad?" Recognizing the dependence she has on him, the narrator continues to tolerate the unfortunate condition he is in. From the frustration of Laura, we enter the peril of pressure. The song was released as the first single from the album, reaching the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. As with Allentown, the song was paired with a music video. The video was inspired by a variety of sources, including A Clockwork Orange, Poltergeist, and The Parallax View. The melody of the song was written to musically represent the feeling of pressure. The classically composed lead organ melody was recorded with 6 overdubbed synthesizers, creating the powerful explosion of the final recording. The driving rhythm of the song shows shades of new wave from Glass Houses, and this rhythm paired with the blaring melody is meant to drill into your head like the feeling of a headache. The growing resentment and discontent from Laura is quickly growing into manic anxiety. In reality, Joel's anxieties during the making of the album were catching up to him, leading to writer's block. He described what happened in an interview. "I was about halfway through and I said, well, what am I gonna do? I don't have any ideas. It's gone. It's dead. I have nothing. There's nothing." And then the woman who is my secretary came into the house at that point and said, "Wow, you look like you're under a lot of pressure. I bet you that'd be a good idea for a song." And I went, "Thank you." When talking about the lyrics of Pressure, Joel said that there is no big hidden meaning there. The story concerns getting to a certain age where you find out that you will have to deal with a lot of pressure. It also serves as a refutation to those who do not seem to live in the real world, but believe they understand the pressures of living in it. In that way, it was a "come back and talk to me when you've been through the mill" type song, as Joel described it. During the first verse, the narrator's line deliveries are constantly interrupted by echoing backing vocals exclaiming the title of the song, like the pressure is becoming an obstacle that is keeping him from moving forward. When we arrive at the first chorus, the mood is established. You've only had to run so far, so good, but you will come to a place where the only thing you feel are loaded guns in your face, and you'll have to deal with pressure. Later in the song, he mocks those who pretend to know pressure. You turned the tap dance into your crusade. Now here you are with your faith and your Peter Pan advice. You have no scars on your face, and you cannot handle pressure. When we get to the bridge, he cross-examines one of these frauds. All grown up and no place to go. Psych 1, Psych 2. What do you know? All your life is Channel 13, Sesame Street. What does it mean? The idea that schooling does not replace experience continues from Allentown. Channel 13 refers to WNET, which was the New York PBS station which launched Sesame Street. Joel described it as the intellectual station, where you would never find anything about real life. And the specific mention of Sesame Street points out the juvenility of those supposed intellectuals. Even though the song ends abruptly, the pressure will only worsen in the next. The quiet symphony of cricket chirps and wind chimes is soon interrupted by the sound of a Bell UH-1 Iroquois, or Huey, helicopter flying overhead. Even in the opening seconds of Goodnight Saigon, the sound design represents the conflict that the song is based on, with these environmental sounds in a Vietnam night being disrupted by an American helicopter, in the way that the American military was forced to step into territory where it didn't belong. Billy Joel cited the ending number on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, A Day in the Life, as the inspiration for the song. When examining the composition, it shares attributes of that song, such as the extended length, multiple musical build-ups, and soft beginning, leading to a powerful crescendo. These are all attributes that are shared with countless songs, but they are performed in a similar manner to A Day in the Life. Following the environmental sound design of the opening, a simple piano melody fades in, and is repeated throughout the song. It elegantly portrays a melancholy and a note structure that continues to rise and then plummets and rises again. The first verse is performed with just a vocal, acoustic guitar, and shaker. Then the second verse builds in intensity and adds a bass backing. The third verse increases the intensity further and adds a drum rhythm and orchestra. And then the song explodes into the epic chorus, before returning to the bare piano melody. Joel wrote the song for his friends who were veterans of the Vietnam War, who had a difficult transition back to civilian life. They asked him to write a song about the war, but Joel initially refused, believing he was unfit to write such a song due to his lack of experience. But his friends said that they would provide him with their stories from the war, and these stories became the lyrics of the song. And this perspective was unique for this type of song. There had been songs about the Vietnam War for over 15 years prior to Goodnight Saigon, but they were not written from the soldier's perspective. They were primarily concerned with the morality of the war. However, Joel was not interested in writing about the morality of the war, but rather the experiences of those who were there. The opening verse establishes the perspective of the song and the beginning of the story. We met as soulmates on Paris Island. We left as inmates from an asylum. And we were sharp as knives, and we were so gung-ho to lay down our lives. Paris Island was a Marine boot camp that had an exceedingly tough reputation, and many soldiers going to Vietnam went there first. The lyrics read like a journal cataloging the war from the ground, and this style shows the genuine effort Joel put into capturing the experience of the war. The second verse demonstrates the destruction of these soldiers' spirit. We came in spastic like tameless horses. We left in plastic as numbered corpses. And we learned fast to travel light. Our arms were heavy, but our bellies were tight. The third and fourth verses further show the experience of the soldiers. We had no home front. We had no soft soap. They sent us Playboy. They gave us Bob Hope. We dug in deep and shot on sight, and prayed to Jesus Christ with all of our might. We had no cameras to shoot the landscape. We passed the hash pipe and played our Doors tape. And it was dark, so dark at night, and we held on to each other like brother to brother. We promised our mothers we'd write. These verses begin a vocal moment that continues later in the song, the echo of certain words. In this verse, the word night is echoed, drawing attention to the description of the environment and providing an audio disturbance that could easily catch you off guard. After this, the chorus launches to stratospheric heights with incredible passion. The endless backing vocals chant the phrase, "And we would all go down together," as if the survivors and the spirits of the deceased soldiers are all singing in unison. The fifth verse addresses the primary point of all songs about the Vietnam War, the morality. Remember Charlie, remember Baker. They left their childhood on every acre. And who was wrong, and who was right? It didn't matter in the thick of the fight. We see that the debate over the ethics of the war did not change the horrific experiences of the soldiers who fought in it, and then the lyrics of the bridge tell of the soldiers marching to their inevitable doom. We held the day in the palm of our hands. They ruled the night, and the night seemed to last as long as 6 weeks, on Paris Island. We held the coastline, they held the highlands, and they were sharp as knives. They heard the hum of our motors, they counted the rotors, and waited for us to arrive. The level of detail in the lyrics is impressive, and it serves to make the story as genuine as possible. After one final chorus, the song ends with a fade-out into the audio design that began the song. Almost as if this whole experience was not worth the pain, the loss, and the sacrifice of the men of this generation. Goodnight Saigon is accurately held as one of Billy Joel's most ambitious and grandiose songs, but I would go a step further in saying that not only is it his greatest song, but one of the greatest songs about war ever written. The warm, bright lights of the holiday season lift us up from Goodnight Saigon into She's Right on Time. Billy Joel decided that the audience needed to take a breath after the last song, so we enter a heartwarming, positive story. Prior to the song, Columbia Records had asked Joel to make a Christmas album, but he refused, believing it to be uncreative. Despite this, Joel said that he had always loved Christmas, Christmas songs, and Christmas carols. Although he did not want to make an album, he did make a Christmas song, seeking to capture the spirit of the season. This would be that song. The inviting instrumentation and catchy melody immediately invoke the feelings associated with Christmas without being too overbearing. The composition is mostly positive, but carries a hint of emotional complexity, giving the song a touch of sentimentality that makes the atmosphere even more evocative of the holidays. Lyrically, She's Right on Time begins a trilogy of relationship-based songs that increase in tension with each song. The story is about a reunion between two lovers after some time has passed. The first verse establishes the mood. Turn on all the Christmas lights, 'cause baby's coming home tonight. I can hear her footsteps in the street. Turn the choral music higher, pile more wood upon the fire. That should make the atmosphere complete. The song was given a holiday backdrop due to being written around Christmas time, but the references to holiday decorations are almost gone as the song continues. In the next verse, the narrator recognizes his faults and is extremely thankful for his love returning. I'm a man with so much tension, far too many sins to mention. She don't have to take it anymore. But since she said she's coming home, I torn out all my telephones. Soon she will be walking through that door. Now we see that the narrator most likely drove his love away due to his own failings in the past. But in the third and fourth verses, the narrator realizes that even during that time, his love supported him. Left to my own device, I can always make believe that there's nothing wrong. Still, I will choose to live in the complicated world that we shared for so long. Good or bad, right or wrong. And it occurred to me, while I set up my Christmas tree, she never missed a cue or lost a beat. Every time I lost the meter, there she was when I would need her, greeting me with footsteps in the street. And now that the two are back together again, a renewed relationship can begin to blossom. The previous four numbers showed the hardship of Joel's generation, facing collapsing industry, poisoning relationships, crippling pressure, and the brutality of war. But now, for the first time on the album, the generation's continued hope through strife is finally rewarded with a wholesome Yuletide reunion. Jumping forward in the relationship, we get to the fun rock rhythm of A Room of Our Own. This is another song on the album that is heavily inspired by the Beatles. However, the focus is on Lennon. The instrumentation seems to evoke the up-tempo songs of Lennon's solo career. A Room of Our Own especially resembles the songs Remember and I Found Out from Lennon's debut album. The lyrics resemble a style of writing similar to McCartney. The verses are written in a sort of yin and yang style, saying you got and I got. This writing framework is highly reminiscent of McCartney's lyrics on Hello Goodbye. The lyrics of A Room of Our Own show a growing divide between two partners, with the beginning distinction starting amicably, but becoming more bitter towards the end. The first verse and chorus show the differences between the couple. You've got diamonds and I've got spades. You've got pills and I've got razor blades. You've got yoga, honey, I've got beer. You got overpriced and I got weird. But it's alright. We're the same even though we're alone. It's alright. Yes, we all need a room of our own. A later verse explains the growing issue from the couple's proximity. I can still remember, packed together like a can of sardines. No, no, no. Pushin', shovin', that's when lovin' starts to come apart at the seams. Oh no. During the fade-out, Joel changes the chorus to, got to have a little elbow room of our own, reflecting the increased relationship issues. Unfortunately, A Room of Our Own was partially inspired by real-life events. Billy Joel and his first wife's marriage was breaking down during the making of the song, and following the release of the album, they would divorce. To finish this trilogy of songs, we end up in Surprises. When asked about surprises, Joel said there were really cool chords in that song. And when listening to the song and paying attention to the chord progression, he's certainly true. It changes to fit the mood of the lyrics at each and every turn, granting the song an extreme level of cohesion. The song begins with a wondrous synth sound, and for me it brings to mind a shooting star. As is tradition for this album, the Beatles' influence continues, mostly evident in the rhythm, interesting chord progression, and melodic chorus. The song was initially written about a gruesome event in Joel's life. He had a motorcycle accident which almost killed him, and it severely damaged his thumb and wrist. He was out of commission for months, and was told that his hands might never heal again. When he was in the hospital, his first wife and her attorney visited him. She was there to ask Joel to sign over almost everything he owned. This cascade of terrible events inspired the idea of surprises. They may be wonderful, but they also may be horrible, and at certain times the horrible surprises never seem to stop. The first verse and chorus introduce this. Don't get excited, don't say a word. Nobody noticed, nothing was heard. It was committed discreetly, it was handled so neatly, and it shouldn't surprise you at all. You know. The narrator already seems to accept what has just happened. He digs deeper in the second verse and chorus. Break all the records, burn the cassettes. I'd be lying if I told you that I had no regrets. There were so many mistakes, and what a difference it makes, but still it shouldn't surprise you at all. You know. It seems that the same regretful, flawed, yet self-aware man of She's Right on Time is present within Surprises. The final verse and chorus take an accusatory turn. What has it cost you? What have you won? The sins of the fathers are the sins of the sons. It was always within you, it will always continue, but it shouldn't surprise you at all. You know. It seems the man and his wife from the previous two songs are bitterly divided, giving the final song in the trilogy a tragic end. And at an emotional low such as this, the question arises, is it possible to sink lower? From the shooting star synths of Surprises, we fly high up into the sky onto the wing of a commercial airplane, soaring through Scandinavian skies. This song proved to be the most complex recording featured on the album, taking 6 weeks just to mix in the studio. The defining instrumental feature of the song is the complex string arrangement, once again inspired by the Beatles' string accompaniments scored by their producer George Martin. Joel praised the way that the Beatles would incorporate strings into their songs. Most popular music until that point used strings merely as a plush background feature. This type of string arrangement used by artists like Neil Diamond and Barry Manilow was less appealing to Joel, and he came up with the term Valium strings to describe it. The Beatles brought the strings to the forefront of the music, integrating them into the rock instrumentation and interweaving them into the melody. The most apparent comparison of the strings in Scandinavian Skies is to the strings of I Am the Walrus and Strawberry Fields Forever. Like those songs, Scandinavian Skies uses the strings to create a baroque, yet sinister, otherworldly atmosphere. The song begins with a synth line that introduces a soaring psychedelic atmosphere, paired with the environmental sounds of an airplane. They are soon joined by a regimented, military-style drumming. Joel's voice enters with one of the most unique singing styles he ever delivered on any of his studio albums. He sounds like an eerie, distant John Lennon. This complements the disturbing chord progression that can drift into surprisingly frightening areas. I recommend listening to Scandinavian Skies on headphones. I believe it to be the greatest moment of the album to showcase the stereo production. It feels like a bad dream swirling around your head while you're 40,000 feet up in the air. Especially with eyes closed, it is an extremely powerful listen. Joel began writing the song in the early 1970s during his first tour in Europe, but the incident that spawned the song's completion happened during his 1980 tour. While flying from Amsterdam to Stockholm, he had a nightmarish experience with heroin. This was his first encounter and proved to be his last. The opening 4 verses describe the visual experience of the trip. The sins of Amsterdam were still a recent surprise, and we were flying over Scandinavian skies. We climbed towards the sun. We turned and cursed as one. We pulled the shades and closed our eyes. The Stockholm city lights were slowly starting to rise, and we were strapped against those Scandinavian skies. The landing gear came down and touched the Swedish ground, and we were all so paralyzed. We are told of a strange illustration of a Scandinavian tour from above. The rest of the verses continue the tour, becoming increasingly harrowing. On the plane, we were mainly sound and lights. In the veins, we could play the blues all night. The tour of Germany was bleeding into our eyes, and we were sailing over Scandinavian skies. We had the Midas touch until we met the Dutch, and they exhausted our supplies. Who's to pay for this international flight? Who could stay? We were only there for the night. We watched the power fall inside the Oslo Hall, while all the cold Norwegians cried. Who could say what was left and where was right? By the way, I could play the blues all night. After experiencing the song, the appropriate question would be, what was the purpose of this song's placement on the album? The album consistently speaks to the baby boomer generation, who at the time of the album's release were mostly in their 20s and 30s. And a ubiquitous experience for this age group was the rise of drug use in the 1960s and 1970s. Among the drugs that had become commonly used was heroin, which turned into an addiction epidemic. And whereas on Goodnight Saigon, Joel drew upon the experiences of others, Scandinavian Skies comes from his own twisted experience with the drug. By this point, we've been through tough economic times, frayed nerves, deadly warfare, shattered relationships, and mind-melting drugs. What do we get from this experience? Intimate piano and string instrumentation open this number. The narrator chimes in from the left side of the stereo channel, like he is sitting in the left balcony above a stage. Musically, the song is a come-down from the heights and horrors of Scandinavian Skies. We're left here to quietly ponder one question: where's the orchestra? In the first verse, the narrator questions the show he is seeing. Where's the orchestra? Wasn't this supposed to be a musical? Here I am, in the balcony. How the hell could I have missed the overture? The narrator arrived at a play hoping to see a musical, but he is left with only disappointment. He then begins to arbitrarily point out aspects of the show in an unenthusiastic manner. I like the scenery, even though I have absolutely no idea at all what is being said, despite the dialogue. There's the leading man, the movie star who never faced an audience. And in the final verse, the narrator accepts the show for what it is, rather than what he wanted. At least I understood all the innuendo and the irony, and I appreciate the roles the actors played, the point the author made. And after the closing lines, and after the curtain calls, the curtain falls on empty chairs. Where's the orchestra? The lyrics are an allegory about a man reaching adulthood and expecting a better life but repeatedly being discouraged. And after a long period of time of sustained dejection, he accepts life for what it is. Throughout the album, the narrator and his generation have been repeatedly broken down until all of their hope was finally eradicated. But, at the very end of the song, we hear a clarinet reiterate the melody of Allentown. Even after all of these impassable barricades and crushing obstacles, there is still a glimmer of hope, an idea that life can get better somehow, some way. This is the core message of the album. Life is hard. Life is very, very hard. It will continually throw curveballs at you and make you start from square one again. But when we hold on to our hope, then we have the ability to do the best we can, even for just one more day. With the story at its end, we draw closed the Nylon Curtain. The album cover stands out among the rest of Joel's catalog. It was only the second album cover not to feature a picture of him on the front. He said that the album cover is supposed to look like a paperback book that you'd see at an airport. This artistic choice, to me, seems to make the album appear more highbrow and appeal to an older demographic who would read a book like this on the plane. The orange sky of the design could represent a smog-filled sky due to the nearby factories, or it could represent a sun setting upon the life that we once knew. No matter the explanation, the sky represents a foggy, opaque view of something greater. The rows of identical suburban houses with garages could represent the upbringing of the baby boomer generation, and the uniformity could represent the suburban towns of the 1950s, or the communal story the generation is a part of. The white bars on the side, of course, represent the Nylon Curtain, partially obscuring the view but allowing us to see a selective view of the landscape. When asked about the name of the album, Billy Joel stated, "When you think of the Soviet Union, behind the Iron Curtain. And I think we have our own kind of barrier here, which I call the Nylon Curtain. It's kind of a synthetic, like a rose-colored isolation between us and the rest of the world. It's how we look out and how people see us looking in. While the Soviet Union constructed an impassable barrier to its people, America manufactured a cloudy sheet surrounding its people." When examining the Nylon Curtain, we discover genius musicianship and composition, insightful writing, unforgettable performances, a unique concept, and grand production. Considering all of these accomplishments, I believe the Nylon Curtain to be Billy Joel's greatest musical achievement, his magnum opus. Thank you so much for watching.